Hello everyone and welcome to Tanchaz Talk, the world's only English language program focusing primarily on Hungarian folk music. I am Kalman Magyar Öcsi, speaking to you from Southern Studios in Naples, Florida. Episodes of Tanchaz Talk, which combine a mix of music and stories delivered by yours truly, are available as always on tanchaz.com. That's Tanchaz.com. Or on YouTube. Just search Tanchaz Talk and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Today we have an episode of Tanchaz Talk Interviews. This is where I delve into long-form interviews with a wide array of guests. Episodes of Tanchaz Talk Interviews are available on all popular podcast platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify podcast stores. Make sure you subscribe and leave a nice review if you like what you hear. Now, today's episode is part of the Tanchaz Talk Masterclass series, where I go full-on folk nerd in depth as I geek out, exploring the minutiae of various aspects of Hungarian folk music with one of Hungary's leading experts on the subject, and that would be none other than my good friend Soma Salamon from Hungary. Soma is a lecturer at the Liszt Academy of Music in Budapest and one of Hungary's most in-demand, fabulous folk musicians and teachers. And I'm very, very lucky to have the ability to pick his brain during the Masterclass series. Again, it's rare to find someone who speaks English so well and also speaks the language of Hungarian folk music so well. Now, I last had Soma on the podcast back in March 2021 in the first installment of this masterclass series. If you haven't yet, it might make sense to go back to listen to that episode before delving into this one. In that prior episode, we investigated the genesis of Hungarian folk music research, which we're going to continue with today. We started by peeling off the layers of ethnomusicology, and Soma explains what that means. We identified early researchers of Hungarian folk music in the 19th century, and then we went into the 20th century as we listened to the great Béla Bartók's first ever phonograph recording of Hungarian folk music, and we heard about the remarkable coincidental encounter between a young woman who knew how to sing and Béla Bartók, who might be the most renowned and famous collector of Hungarian folk music. That encounter propelled Mr. Bartók into being a great proponent of Hungarian folk music he became. In our prior episode, we stopped short of getting really deeply into Béla Bartók's work. He's a world-famous composer, of course, whose compositions have been played in concert halls and opera houses throughout the world. Some of his works you might have heard of include his opera Bluebeard's Castle, his ballet The Miraculous Mandarin, as well as his multiple concertos for violin, piano, even for viola, and well beyond that, of course. Now, but for us folk junkies, the life of Béla Bartók will always be associated with his prolific work in researching, collecting, and categorizing Hungarian folk music. And I would say that for those Hungarians living in North America, Bartók has even a further special place in our hearts, as he settled in New York in 1940 and lived his last years in Manhattan, where he died at the age of 61 in the year 1945. Now, Professor Soma Salamon is uniquely situated to speak about Bartók's research, since his doctoral exploration has focused on Bartók. I'm very, very excited to speak about Bartók's work today with Soma, who I'm honored to welcome back on the program. Hello, Soma.
Hello, Öcsi. It's so nice to hear you again.
Yes, I know. Everyone says that.
Yes.
Hey, Soma, since we
That's a kind of polite introduction,
Yeah, well, it is. Nice to hear you. Nice to see you. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Some says we Hungarians are not polite enough. I doubt that.
No.
We are.
Well, you are for sure. Soma, since we last spoke, I think your doctoral work is wrapping up soon. What is its focus, and what's the status right now of your doctoral work?
I hope, indeed, I hope I am just reaching the finish line. My doctoral dissertation is oven fresh and ready and was submitted in May, and now it's under careful inspection by the opponents, and it will be defended, or at least I'm gonna try to defend it at the end of September, along with my doctoral concert, which I have to perform as well in Liszt Academy, along, by the way, with fellow musician and very, very good friend, and also a doctor to be, hopefully, Attila Miho, who's a wonderful violin player. And so the opus magnum or opus minor, I don't know. So the the dissertation itself, it's actually ready, and so I am just waiting for the proper opinions and for the time to prepare my defense for it.
Great.
So that's
when we watch a football game, the big cheer that we go is defense. So I'll be going to Liszt in September and cheering in the back.
Actually, it's open. It's open. You can come. You can come and shout.
Okay.
24th of September. I think it's scheduled on 24th of September, but
wonderful.
But I don't know.
So the next time we speak, hopefully you'll have it in hand. Now, Soma, what's the title, the focus of that research?
Actually, my title is pretty long. Actually, even in Hungarian, not to mention English. So perhaps Fazakas Albi, from Heveter, told me that. It's so good. It fitted it into 4 lines, only 4 lines. So it's a pretty long title, which is interethnic and areal relations. Areal, it's a little bit perhaps it's a not well-known word. It's from areal linguistics. So I don't know. When you investigate on the differences in a certain area and between certain locations within that area. So that's areal, interethnic and areal relations in the flute tune stock of Bartók's 1914 field recording trip in Moros-Torda County of Transylvania.
Well,
that was a title, actually.
That's a title. So, interethnic and areal. So that kind of throws us right into the work of Bartók. Now, and it is so your doctoral work is about Bartók. Again, as I mentioned at the intro, you're uniquely situated to speak about this because you've been living with this topic for many years now, as you've been focusing on this work. Bartók was born in 1881, and then we had this at the age of 23 in 1904 is when he heard this Székely handmaiden singing a beautiful song when he was on vacation up north, right?
Yep, in Gellice Puszta. It was in Gellice Puszta, which is not in Transylvania actually, but it's around.
Is this Slovakia, like today's?
In today's Slovakia, yes. It's now it belongs to the Slovakian city Ratko or Ratkova in Slovakian. Okay. So it's around or not far from Besztercebánya, Banska Bystrica in Slovakian, and Bartók was hanging around there for vacation, I believe, and then there was a Székely, Transylvanian Hungarian Székely handmaiden there called Dósa Lidi, and when Bartók first encountered with a song, she sang, I don't know, during housework there, and that was a eureka moment for Bartók. That was the thing I've sought in my entire life. So that was I don't know, the hand of God or something like that.
Yes. And he wrote to his sister a lovely letter, right, saying this is going to be my area of focus now. I want to really delve into this.
And I believe last time I spoke about it that he wanted to find new Hungarian national sound, or he wanted to find kind of Hungarian national music. But in the meantime, he wanted to set adrift from the romantic style of the late 19th century, or the late romantic style. And he was influenced by contemporary composers like Debussy and other composers who used oligotone scales, so scales with a few tones and not diatonic scales. And when Bartók, and not especially in this song, but later, for example, when in 1907 he discovered the pentatonic in County Cheek in Székelyföld, he just met with so he met with a fully Hungarian music, and he met with a music which used very, very similar musical patterns, which patterns were used by his idols like Debussy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's perhaps last time I just tried to illustrate this feeling with when you are looking for a Mercedes and you are looking for a convertible at the same time, and you just find, oh my God, it's a convertible Mercedes. So that was something like that.
Well, and when you mentioned pentatonic, and this is not going to be the episode when we're going to delve really into any harmonic or melodic structure or theory, but and that might be a nice.
I can hardly wait that part.
I know that might be the next one.
When I'll have enough time to drill deep in the tune types of Hungarian folk music, but not today.
Right. Yeah. So that's a teaser. To when we talk about pentatonic and the like, we're not going to really delve into what that means right now. But take us back to 1904. I mean, he has this discovery like, oh, that's Hungarian folk music, and I would like to drill down on that and get to know that. And all of a sudden, like what are the first steps he's taking? Where does he start going, and what's his method?
So actually, the location, the original location of the first songs collected by him are from Kibéd, so from Transylvania, from Maros Torda county, the very same county he visited in 1914 as well, and that's field trip is the topic of my doctoral dissertation. But the first field recordings by Bartók are made in Békés, county, so in Békés, and then he started to record in Békés county, or collect folk songs in Békés county.
So that's in south.
To be precise,
southeastern.
And he as his first recorded songs, and he's used the phonograph invented by Thomas Edison.
Right.
So he actually recorded these songs to wax cylinders. Mm-hmm. Perhaps it's worth a try to just a little bit explain that how this machine worked. That the collector could use around 2.5 minutes for each wax cylinder. So and those wax cylinders were extremely fragile, and the collector had to carry the entire device, mm-hmm. the recording device, and all the wax cylinders. Usually, they were in cylindrical boxes, and they usually put it into wooden boxes, and they wanted, and they tried to prevent the collision between the cylinders and the breaking of the cylinders with some hay, or straw, and so you can imagine that the ethnomusicologist had to travel to countryside. So among the contemporary circumstances of the roads and there were actually no stone roads and asphalt roads, only only how do you call it?
Yeah.
Dirt road.
Yeah, dirt road.
Dirt roads,
Mm-hmm.
dirt roads, and very low degree of infrastructure for transportation, basically on wagons and carriages like that, and they had to carry the device, they had to carry all the cylinders, so it was a very I don't know how to say.
Well, it was a tough trip.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
yeah. Tough or I don't know, elaborate or how to say. So it was or a roundabout thing.
Right.
Maybe that's the best. So it was not an easy thing. And okay. Anyway, his first recordings were made in 1906. 1906. And he recorded in Transdanubia as well, in Dunántúl,
okay.
Transdanubia.
Yeah.
But he did recordings in Alföld, in Békés, and that was basically his two target areas for 1906.
Okay.
And then in 1907. He started to discover the music of the Székelys in Transylvania, and then he ventured to Csík county, which was, the successor county of Csíkszék, the seat of Csík.
Okay.
And then he started and he discovered certain pentatonic structures in Csík, and that was actually another historical encounter for him,
Right.
Because this pentatonic thing that was what I just tried to explain a few minutes before. So something very new, something very Hungarian, and something very Debussy-like, or not necessarily Debussy-like, but for Bartók, it was very nice music, and that's why he just started to focus on those locations in Transylvania, and from that time perhaps. From that time onwards, he tried to look for these simple musical patterns in folk music, these oligotone or oligochord patterns in folk music, and instead of the broad scales, the broad scales, so chromatic or diatonic scales. When he found a tune which was pentatonic, for example, or tetratonic, or could be reduced to a pentatonic melodic skeleton, that was a good discovery for him. Because he with a very good instinct, with a very good instinct, he could he sensed. Perhaps as a good musicians with a brilliant ear and a brilliant musical education, he sensed that those patterns, those tunes, must belong to a really old stratum of folk music and folk music history. Those simple patterns, and actually later research has proven these presumptions of Bartók. So that's actually by the way perhaps the most interesting thing about him, and that's the most outstanding about his entire oeuvre, that most of his findings, most of his presumptions, and his entire system he just generated as a pioneer of comparative ethnomusicology was almost entirely verified later by later research, when later research found multiple times more incoming collected items, than Bartók collected in his entire life. And so Bartók as a pioneer, and that's very, very important, that he had, of course, there were people before him. So, for example, there was Béla Bartók, I spoke about him last time.
Yes.
But so Bartók could not do the same thing we do. That we can go to the library, we can read his works. We have a lot of literature in the past 100 past century, and Bartók did not have this kind. So he worked from instinct. Right. From pure instinct, as a musician, as an extremely talented musician, a sensitive person, and a musically educated guy. So that's a very, very that's why he's considered a genius, for example, or partially why he's considered a genius, because that's an outstanding achievement. That as a pioneer, he could establish a system and establish a kind of approach and perspective on Hungarian, and not only Hungarian folk music, which is more or less, even these days, can be considered as correct, right. Correct, and was verified by later researchers. And I would like to, by the way, okay, so just go with your next question, because I think we could. We should turn back on this thing, because I have a lot of how to say, thoughts on this.
I know you do. Well, let's say this. I asked about his methodology. So he started traveling. We get the fact that he's going from one end of the Hungarian territory, which is Dunan, Tula, Transdanubia, all the way over to the Carpathian Mountains towards Cheek. He's running the gamut in terms of geography. He is also traveling internationally, correct?
Yes.
And where I'm going with this is, he is a pioneer. You use the term comparative ethnomusicology. We use the term in your doctoral work, interethnic, aerial, as in terms of looking at area. There is something to his method. He's looking for something, or he's discovering something. What is that? And where is he? By the way, where else did he travel to over the years, and why?
Yes. Okay, so this story will be. I think it will be extremely interesting. So first, who's the greatest and most prolific Romanian folk music collectors of all time?
No.
Bartók, because he collected tons of Romanian tunes, even more than Hungarian ones, actually. So the tune stock, the Romanian tune stock collected by Bartók is larger than the Hungarian tune stock, and even the Slovakian tune stock collected by Bartók is larger. He collected more melodies, more Slovakian and more Romanian melodies, and the Hungarian melody stock is only the third in row, because okay, I don't want to go fast forward, So he collected a lot of Romanian music, Slovakian, Ruthenian, Ruthenian.
Yeah, Ruthenian.
So Ruthenian, and also South Slavic music.
Okay.
And also he collected. It's very interesting. In the 1930s, he traveled to Turkey. To Anatolia,
Yeah.
And then he there he collected Turkish tunes, Turkish melodies, and also he visited North Africa as well, where he collected Arabic music. And he was a complete genius, because he wanted to communicate with all the ethnicities he collected music from on their native language. So he spoke Romanian fluently.
Wow.
He spoke Slovakian, and actually, he was born in Nagy-Szentmiklós. Nagy-Szentmiklós, it's a town from Banság region, and there were Romanians in Nagy-Szentmiklós as well. Now it's in Romania, Bánság or Bánát. It's not far from the Hungarian border. But if my informations are correct and if I'm not mistaken, Bartók and also Bartók spent quite a lot of time in his young years and in Felvidék in today's Slovakia, in certain cities where even that time there was a strong presence of Slovakian ethnicity there. But as I know, Bartók learned Slovakian Romanian language only for the sake of the ethnomusicologic collection, for his field recordings, and that's unbelievable. So he was a how to say polylinguist, or how to say polyglot, yeah. So so his approach towards collecting music in the Carpathian Basin, it was always, and thanks to Bartók, that's very, very important, thanks to Bartók, because that's one of our most important and main legacies which he gave us, the ethnomusicologists and people interested towards folk music of the future after him. So for the Hungarian ethnomusicology, that was one of his greatest gift, is to set aside any national ideology or political ideology when you work with folk music, and focus entirely on the tunes and to turn towards any ethnicities folk music in the Carpathian Basin with entire respect and humble curiosity. So the mainstream of the Hungarian folk music research, even these days and since the time of Bartók, so basically from the onset, considers the body of traditional music within the Carpathian Basin as a phenomenon formed by centuries-long coexistence and interaction of multiple ethnicities, and that's something which was planted in our brains, or the brains of Hungarian researchers, first by Bartók. And so therefore the Hungarian ethnomusicologists have always given special attention to the bonds or links, relations between the folk music traditions of Hungarians and our ethnic neighbors.
I understand. I get the Slovak Romanian thing, because that's within the Carpathian Basin. But what's the deal with Turkey and North Africa and Algeria? What's he looking for there?
For broadening the comparative research further, he tried to find similar musical patterns, because he had a notion or an idea that if we can find similarities within the folk music or between Hungarian folk music and other ethnicities, perhaps it would be very helpful to find any historical traces, the historical ancestors of Hungarians, and that's actually, by the way, with the comparative research, these relations and links were later found, by the way, between Turkic people and Hungarians, and also between the Finno-Ugrian people and Hungarians, which is actually the same pattern or the same result which the linguistic research did in the past centuries.
Did he and did he find any links? Okay, I get the Turkish connection with what was going on in North African music. Did the research he conduct there underscore any of his concepts or his ideas or notions that he had here?
Sorry again, please. I just did not understand.
Well, yeah, maybe it
was the thread.
Not a great question, maybe. The work, let's say in Angola and in North Africa, he listened to tunes. You know,
not Angola, but Algeria.
Algeria, excuse me. I want to say
Angola is Southeast Africa, actually.
Okay.
Southwest. Sorry. Southwest.
Right.
Southeast is Mozambique. I was there once.
Okay.
Angola is south.
So Algeria. Is he finding any thread between Hungarian folk music and, let's say, Algerian?
You know, those tunes there are pretty different from Hungarian.
Right.
So even Bartók's research and the later research researches showed way more signs and indications leading to the Central Asian territories, and to the territories around the Ural Mountains and those ethnicities like the Cheremis ethnicity or the Finno-Greek ethnicities and Central Asian parts. So this the Algerian it was not, but you know, for Bartók it was very interesting for him to go there, and he tried to apply the same comparative analytic system on the Algerian music, and actually he succeeded with that because he could. And that's no, okay. So that's another very important thing, and that's what I wanted to explain next. And you know, Béla Bartók indeed pioneered to examine these interethnic relations with a very scientific accuracy, very accurate scientific way. And what actually did he do? Because you know that's and it's a little bit like a kitchen secret of the ethnomusicologist. So that's one thing, that you are on field out there and you collect a lot of tunes and you have a lot of recorded items, and you just bring them home. And then he started to regard these tunes and listen to these tunes, and pretty soon he started to discover some similarities between certain tunes, even in the Hungarian tune stock and in the tune stock in the Carpathian Basin, and so tunes collected from Hungarians, tunes collected from Romanians. He started to discover some similarities, and then he started to apply a really meticulous musicological analysis on the tunes, which the basic principles, by the way, of this analysis were not invented by Bartók. He borrowed these principles from a Finnish ethnomusicologist called Ilmari Krohn, and the main goal for these examinations was to monitor and to find and to discover the melodic contours, the melody. So the shape of the melody within a tune, within a folk song, and the melody contour, and for defining the melodic contour, there are some parameters you have to find a melodies, like, for example, you know, to identify the range of the tune, which means, you know, the highest and the lowest pitch the very tune uses,
right.
And also to the ending lines the ending notes of the lines within a tune. Basically, for example, you know, most of the tunes in Hungary, in the Hungarian tune stock, are 4-line structures. So, for example, a 4-line structure, but even in a 3-line structure or a longer structure, the ending notes in every lines, or as Bartók called them, sections, those ending notes are very, very good giveaways and very good indicators of the very movement of the melodic contour. So the shape of the melody contour. These tunes actually, so these ending notes are called cadences in ethnomusicology, or were called caesurae caesura by Bartók. So those are also very important. But these are only quantitative parameters in order to make this analysis easier, and in order to make the comparison of kindred melodies easier. Okay?
Got it.
You got it. Okay. And then Bartók just started to realize that within these melodies, within this tune stock collected by him, there are kindred melodies, which kindred melodies can be put in groups in melodic categories and melodic types, and also every year he just collected more and more and more tunes.
Right.
And his perspective, his view was just gradually broadened. Gradually broadened, and always with and he was a very self-reflective person. So he always reviewed, for example, his former statements about any phenomenon in folk music, when he just learned about a new phenomenon in folk music, which was something new, something which made him to review his former statements. So he did this as well with a remarkable scientific accuracy. So that's what he did, and let me tell you a story that the other day, a few months ago, for example, I read a dissertation, a doctoral dissertation, written by an ethnomusicologist in the USA, and one of the main claims of the dissertation was that Bartók's classification system, for example, is a kind of pseudoscience, and
pseudoscience.
Writer, pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And the writer started to refute all these things because the founding of the writer, after visiting a region in Transylvania, actually, it's funny, disclaimer, visited a region in Transylvania where Bartók never collected a single tune, so basically,
yeah.
And the founding of the author of this dissertation was that the Bartók's approach is unscientific from the onset, since the basic principle of grouping the tunes and Bartók's system and Bartók's approach is a so-called ethnicity of the tunes. So based on from which ethnicity he collected the tunes, which is actually not true. Because the basic grouping principle was the melody line, and when he just started to discover these groups, he just then started, and that's now way deep in the internet and stuff. He started to realize that certain groups. So he started to, for internet research, he started to investigate upon the incidence of certain tune types in among certain ethnicities. Okay, the incidence. So or the probability of incidence, or how to say. So I think you understand.
Right.
So at certain ethnicities.
Yeah.
So for example, I have A ethnicity and B ethnicity. Okay, and I have a tune type, which is abundant.
A what? What was it said?
Abundant.
Abandoned. Okay.
Abundant. Okay. So sorry for my.
That's okay. I got
abundant, and in the A ethnicities repertoire, no matter where I record it, no matter where I record it, perhaps if I record it in a region where A ethnicity is completely homogeneous and it's inhabited only by A ethnicity, but there are certain regions where A ethnicity and B ethnicity has a contact zone, or they live together, or it's a heterogeneous mixed region, and in the repertoire of A ethnicity, that very tune type is abundant as well. But in the repertoire of the B ethnicity, that tune type is less dense, and it exists, and it can be found only in regions where the B ethnicity lives together with the A ethnicity. Then we can have the strong presumption that this tune type belongs basically by the time of the recording. Perhaps it was once belonged to the B ethnicity, but B ethnicity just forgot it, or they do not sing it anymore, and the A ethnicity, it was transmitted to the A ethnicity, and then so many scenarios can happen.
Right.
But we can have a strong presumption that by the time of the recording, it belongs basically to A ethnicity, the tune, and B ethnicity uses that tune type only in areas and regions where they have influence and impact because they have the proximity of the A ethnicity.
Got it.
You got it. I'm sorry for this.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
I'm sorry that I just explained you like if you were a Martian or something like that. But Bartók was also a pioneer, so he had these purely scientific and logical deductions, and that's another outstanding and mesmerizing thing in Bartók's work. And we must not forget that he was also a composer, a truly prolific composer, and also an academy teacher. So actually, so he was a complete genius. And I'm not, and I have to, and I wanted to, I wanted to state it, and at the very beginning of this interview, that I'm not a Bartók researcher. There are wonderful Bartók researchers in Hungary, and to all the fellow listeners, I can recommend, if you would like to read about Bartók, I can recommend the works of, for example, the composing of Bartók. I can recommend in English, perhaps I mentioned him last time as well, David E. Schneider. He's an American ethnomusicologist, and he's very, very, very deeply involved in Bartók's life and works, and brilliant. He has a brilliant book on Bartók. But for example, from the Hungarian side, I can recommend Professor László Sonfai's works, Professor László Vicarius, the works of Professor László Vicarius, and we have wonderful Bartók researchers and a wonderful Bartók archive. And that's why, by the way, I would like to ask you to not ask me too much about the Bartók's compositions and classical compositions, because I'm not a Bartók researcher, and I don't want to ramble to unknown fields, which fields are less known for myself.
Right, but I have two follow-up questions. Let me.
And sorry, Öcsi, I just not ended. Sorry, as I not ended this theoretical thing, because back to that American dissertation. The other claim of another argument against this claim that Bartók's work is Bartók's principal approach it's originally based on the ethnicity of the tunes. Actually, there is one very important statement in Hungarian ethnomusicology: a tune does not have an ethnicity. For example, there are tunes in the mezőség. Mezőség?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. in mezőség there are tunes. Which tunes there are used by local Hungarians, and in Székelyföld, those tunes are considered as Romanian. Because it's considered as Romanian because it's not used by the very community. So if you live in Székelyföld in a close traditional community, you consider only those tunes as your own, as Hungarian or as Székely, only those tunes you know, you sing, and perhaps and you can consider, for example, stranger tunes as Romanian because those are not Hungarian, and you know, the stranger who a Transylvanian Hungarian knows not Hungarian, that must be Romanian or perhaps Saxon in the historical times, and it can be considered as Romanian because, for example, in that region only Romanians use that tune, but in another region Hungarians use that tune as well. So that's a very there is a very funny story about that, by the way, which was told to me by Mr. István Pávai, Professor István Pávai, who's an outstanding ethnomusicologist, and you know, his English language book on Transylvanian Hungarian folk dance music just released, and I could participate in the proofreading of the book. I think it's a wonderful volume, and I would like to urge everyone who's interested deeply in Transylvanian folk music and you know, the theory behind it to get this book. Anyway, Professor Pávai in Transylvania, he was participating in a radio recording session as an inspector, perhaps, and there were some informants, in adat közlő, or rural peasant musicians,
yes,
from mezőség, or in Romanian Câmpia Transilvánei. There were Romanian musicians or Roma musicians, gypsy musicians with Romanian ethnicity, and also gypsy musicians with Hungarian ethnicity. And that was a very funny situation, because when the Hungarian band, or the Hungarian gypsy band, started to play local tunes, there were other invited informants from Székely, or from a region where there are the Hungarians are more homogeneous,
right?
And those informants just asked that, why do you record this? It's not Hungarian music; it's Romanian. Mm. And then the Romanian band started to play quite similar tunes, and there were also informants from Máramaros, mm-hmm. which is an entire Romanian region, and it's also far from mezőség, and the local informants said the very same, that why do you record it? It's not Romanian music; it's Hungarian. You know, so that's first that the tune does not have an ethnicity. No one, because the tune belongs always, a given tune, a given item belongs always to the very community which community uses the tune. Right. It can belong to a Romanian community. It can belong to a Hungarian community. Of course, certain tunes has way more density in Hungarians, way more density in Romanians. Certain tune types are present basically among Hungarians, are present basically among Romanians, and there's the same thing which I just try to describe with A ethnicity and B ethnicity just a few moments before. So that's the first very important thing. Second very important thing is that Bartók, we must not forget that Bartók basically made his field recordings in ethnically homogeneous territories in Transylvania. Mm-hmm. So when he recorded from Hungarians, he basically recorded in Székelyföld. When he did recording, or Karotaszeg, when he recorded melodies from Romanians, he basically did it in Romanian tunes of the Upper Maros region, or in Hunyad County, or in Bihar. So where it's in settlements which are or certain regions in Alsó-Fehér megye where the settlements are fully inhabited by Romanians. Mm-hmm. So he basically, and he most often recorded tune in an ethnically homogeneous environment, and that's very important. That's why, by the way, the field and the area and the region of which is the topic and the field trip which is a topic of my dissertation, is very exceptional, and it's very interesting because there Bartók started his field trip in a completely Romanian inhabited part of Maros-Torda County, and then he descended southwards towards Nyárádmente, where there are Hungarian villages. And he just passed through the contact zone between the Hungarians and Romanians, and the most prolific instrumental stock of this, the entire stock of this recording field trip is flute music. And in the flute music, you can brilliantly see the interethnic relations between those zones, the overlappings, and the impacts from the Romanian part to the Hungarian, and mutual impacts from the Hungarian part to the Romanian. And it's wonderful because that's a good proof that these ethnicities historically they never lived in isolated, and they were always mingled together. They coexisted coexisted and they had great impacts on each other's music. But sorry, just to go back to the So to go back to this how to say, false insinuation of Bartók that he's based on ethnic, because he published his volumes as Magyar Népdal, Romanian folk music and stuff like that. We have to bear in mind that Bartók's recordings are consist of vocal melodies mainly. Of course, he got a lot of instrumental recordings as well, but even so, the main part of Bartók's recordings is vocal. Mm-hmm. And the vocal music and the folk songs is actually determined by the very language it's sang on. So of course you have to make a grouping even by language, because the usage of folk music by a very society, for example Hungarian or Romanian, it's an equally important factor. And another argument of the author of the dissertation is that using ethnic labels, I don't know what does it mean actually. Using ethnic labels of folk songs is not a good practice, since it's not an a priori attribute of a folk song. Because and I just asked actually the author that, what do you think? What do you recommend instead of it? Mm-hmm. Which is not a priori, which is a priori. Right. And then an author recommended that, for example, grouping by function, function and use. But the function that in one village a tune is used as a funeral song, and in other village perhaps it was once used only just to mock the slow dance. Perhaps I once thought about this. That korcsos.
Yeah.
That, yes.
Jaj de szépen, jaj de szépen.
Yes. Yeah. That's originally a funeral song. And it's a composed song. If you listen to this melodic contour, it's obvious it's a composed song. And it's a funeral song originally. Mm-hmm. And originally the band, because they loved, the Primash and the Roma band loved to joke with the dancers. Originally they played it in a korcsos only when there was a nerd dancer in front of them, and they wanted to joke with the dancer, and they played the funeral song, because you dance like a zombie or something like that.
Right.
And okay, that's a good example, which implies that the function, it's even more a social construct than a language or ethnicity, whatever it means. Okay, so it's even, and to do categorization like this, it was as far from Bartók as it could be. So writing such a thing about Bartók, it's a complete misunderstanding and misinterpretation of Bartók's entire work, and I just hope that it's only because of the superficial lore of Bartók's writings, because the dissertation's bibliography is also very interesting, and some fundamental works are missing from it. Okay, sorry, I think I just spoke too much about it, but that's one of my favorite fields. So I love to speak about interethnic research because for example in Transylvanian music, this interethnical coexistence and it is this interwoven network of impacts made Transylvanian music as diverse and beautiful as we know it, and partially because we love it. So that's the reason, because we love, that's the reason we love Transylvanian music. Okay,
so Soma, I wanted to wrap up on this classification thing, but just so I reiterate it, what I think this interethnic research was all about, that Bartók found that in folk music, not just Hungarian, but Romanian, Slovak, South Slavic, perhaps even Turkish, and maybe even Algerian, but maybe not. There are certain tune types and then subtypes, but there are certain tune melodic types, and no matter what ethnicity you're looking at, certain of each ethnicity's songs fall into one of these tune types usually, right?
Yes, but of course, if you consider each ethnicity, so different ethnicities have different tune types actually. But and that's what I was speaking about, in the context zone, when two ethnicities live mutually within the proximity of each other, they can use and their tune types or can converge, or how to say so. So certain tune types, for example, in Transylvania, can be found equally among Romanians and Hungarians. Certain tune types can be found only in Romanians. Certain tune types can be found only in Hungarians, and in the context zones between Hungarians and Romanians, there are some minglings about that. But those tune types, by the way, are quite obvious, and it's very interesting. So, for example, imagine that Bartók has a brilliant writing. I believe he wrote in 1936, which is Népzenénk és a szomszéd népek zenéje, which is our music, szomszéd népek népzenéje, our music and the music of our neighboring ethnicities, and he have a he has a very interesting observation that he starts to he writes there that in Hungarian villages, in one Hungarian in a particular Hungarian village, no matter which village is that, or a given Hungarian village, there is quite a lot of songs in the repertoire, but in that very region, or even farther region, you will find the same abundance. Okay, that's my favorite word for today's session. Abundance in the repertoire, but it's slightly different and not really different. And in Romanian regions, for example, if you go to Bihar, it was a favorite region of Bartók, considering the Romanian music, because Bihar, as he writes, in Bihar, for Bartók it was wonderful and a surprising experience that even that the Bihar Romanians, and especially before Trianon, they were surrounded by Hungarian ethnicity. Even so, their music their music had almost no impact from Hungarian side. So it had almost nothing Hungarian within it in Bihar.
Right.
Although it was surrounded by Hungarians, so you could expect that if it's surrounded by Hungarian ethnicity, Hungarian music has a strong impact on the music of Bihar Romanians. But there is no, especially by the time of Bartók, and he just wrote in this very writing, in this Népzenék és a szomszéd népek zenéje, that Bihar is like it be separated from the surrounding Hungarians with a Chinese wall. and also as I said, in Hungary, in the Hungarian villages, in the Hungarian inhabited village, he found basically abundant repertoire, but in other region it was also abundant, also in the Hungarian village, but not too different from them.
Yeah, and you can only...
But in Romania, the Romanians, by the Romanian religions. So, for example, in Bihar, the repertoire is, how to say, thinner. So there are not so many tunes in a village repertoire than in a Hungarian village, than the repertoire of a Hungarian village. So less songs, but in another region, it's completely different. And for example, in Maramuresh. And that's and Bartók had also a very good statement about that the Hungarian folk music is diverse in a vertical way, and the Romanian is more diverse in a horizontal way.
Explain. What does that mean?
So the vertical. So in one location, no matter where it is, in a Hungarian location, in the village, the repertoire consists of more tunes, but if you travel farther in another Hungarian village, that repertoire consists of more tunes, a lot of tunes as well, but these two tune stacks are not so different from each other. In the Romanian, the tunes are less in the repertoire of the particular village, but farther, it's completely different. Okay, so it's in the vertical direction in space, in the aerial space. The Romanian music is much more diverse. The Hungarian music is diverse and abundant in a very settlement because they know more tunes and they sing more tunes. So in one settlement, the repertoire is, I don't know, but it makes sense now.
So Romanians, you might find the same types of tunes among a more prominent or a bigger geographic area.
Yes. With Hungarians, in Romanians, it's much more diverse geographically.
Romanian is more diverse geographically.
Yes.
And Hungarians are more abundant in terms of how many tunes they have in a particular village. The tunes don't travel that much. And what is the conclusion?
Yes, that's why it's good that at least one of us speaks English normally. Okay.
Why is that? So are we able to determine what the phenomenon is based on? Is it some kind of the movement of people, or what is it?
It's a result of complex historical, cultural, ethnographical processes.
Got it.
And yes, so it's related to historical, the movement, the settling, the lifestyle. So it's in Transylvania, it's a very, very, very complex. All the phenomena are very, very complex equations.
These kinds of conclusions are really only possible looking at these tune types in this very agnostic way that Bartók did, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And using that term comparative ethnomusicology, I think you've explained it. I really think you have. I know you don't profess to be a Bartók expert, and maybe, although I just wound you up and you spoke over an hour about it, but I wanted to know, do you know that as we look at his pace and his cadence of collections, starting in 1904 all the way until he moved to New York in 1940, while he was doing all this traveling for those almost 40 years, do we see more folk tunes creep into his compositions? And can you talk a little about that? Have you read about that? I'm just curious the impact all this had on him personally. Has such comparisons been made of his work?
Yes. So Bartók basically had. Sorry, have to plug my phone because okay. So Bartók basically, when speaking about incorporating folk music into classical compositions,
yep.
Bartók always lay down three possible paths or ways that how can you adapt folk music into composition. If you like, three methods. Three methods of composition.
Right.
So the first one, when you leave the original folk tune and it's in intact form,
mm-hmm.
and you compose some kind of arrangements for it, and you give it an orchestration. So you work basically with the orchestration and the arrangement and the accompaniment and stuff like that, but the very tune remains quite the same as it appears in the original recording. Okay.
Perhaps a good example of that is Romanian folk dances. That right?
Romanian folk dances is an outstanding example for that.
Yeah.
Although it's widely believed that Bartók represents the first way of composition, which I just described with Romanian folk dances. Although after thorough listening of the original tunes, for example, in the third movement, Romanian folk dances is pretty close to my heart because I even played it in piano when I was a pianist pupil. So if you listen thoroughly the original recordings, especially the third movement, Belok, which is recorded in Egeres, Torontál County, you will find that I think the tempo mark for Belok is Andante or something like that, perhaps, yes. And the entire movement is actually written in a very, very not melancholic, but an andante, very ethereal. Mm-hmm. It's in B minor, and it uses a very distinct scale called altered Dorian, which is re mi fa si la ti do re. So it's also called as Romanian Dorian, or with a Hebrew word, it's a Misha Barak scale. That's, by the way, the scale of the Romanian kaval, which instrument is also used by the Moldai Chango ethnicities, and I also love to play on that. Mm-hmm. But this third movement, this Belok, is in this altered Dorian scale, and in Andante. But if you listen to the original one, it's collected in Banat or Banság, and the local Romanians not really use this scale, or if they use this scale in that very tune, that Belok, which is the original piece, which serves as a base for this movement, it's in Lydian. It's a Lydian mode, which is a mode with a minor with a major third. So it has a major atmosphere there. A Lydian mode, which is, by the way, a truly widespread and widely used mode in the music of Bihar and the music of Banat. For example, I believe the fifth, the Poarga Romaneasca movements also in Lydian mode, and of course the first part of the Mini Celu, the sixth one, it's also in Lydian mode, because and if you play mechanic, for example, it's so for the Bihar music, it's a Lydian mode. Lydian mode is a very widespread in dance music, and this Belok is also in Lydian mode, and not in this major not in this minor altered Dorian scale. So it's the composer's hand. It's a composer's hand on that very movement, and beside of that, and that's the end of the joke and end of the story. That there are in these days there are a lot of attempts by Hungarian revival music bands that, back to roots, and we are the revival bands, and now we're gonna perform the original recordings of the Bartók pieces as they possibly were performed once by the folk, and when the revival bands perform Bartók's Romanian dances for the Pelok movement, there's always someone with a kaval, which is completely unknown instrument in Banat, and known only, 500, 600, 800 kilometers far from that location. And they started to play the tune, this altered Dorian tune, as it appears in the third movement in the score with the kaval. Meanwhile, the original tune, which is, by the way, I think performed by Vasile Vasilika, who's a flute player, it's performed in a completely normal, profane diatonic flute, and it's in Lydian, and it's not. It has also a very good rhythmic accent in it. Like, and it's not andante. It's way faster. And for that you need only to listen though that cylinder recording.
Yes. That's
very tuned, and not just that one, but it's also very. It's also very good to listen the tunes recorded before that on that very session and after that, and because there are 5 Peloks on that tune, and during the other Peloks there are also Csülögetés, so shouting. So it's a very justo test, right. Not that andante one. Okay. Anyway, first way of Bartók's composition. Romanian dances are, by the way, good examples indeed for that. Good examples for that indeed.
At least 5.
Not entirely.
Yeah.
I think this. Yeah. Not entirely, but I think this detour was interesting enough to.
Yes, I agree.
To tell this story. Okay.
The second way.
So second way.
Yeah.
When you do not use an entire folk melody, but you just take out very characteristic and typical patterns from that folk melody, and use only those patterns, and you just you will give a very strong folk music like scent or folk music like sound and atmosphere to your piece with those patterns. So and with this piece, these are the slices of pie,
right.
Pies for Bartók researchers and ethnomusicologists. I don't know if you listen how to say a string quartet or a concerto, and you just discover and that's
right.
That's the the first half of the first part of the second line of that song.
Right.
So that's always a very good entertainment for people who try to decipher this music, and also it evidently flavors the classical composed piece with strong flavors of folk. Okay, and the third one is when you do not use any
snippets,
exact parts of real folk tunes, but you as a composer are so deeply involved in folk music that you can do some patterns on your own, which are entirely your creations, but they have certain similarities to folk music, and they follow the attributes of the folk songs. So you can create artificial folk music like patterns, and that's the highest level when you start to become one with the folk. So that's even a kind of Buddhist or something like that. So you just or Jedi like, you not big,
right, one with the Force. Yeah.
He became one with the Force.
Yeah.
When an old Jedi master passes, and he became one with folk.
But
So
Soma, is that a intentional? The third method, is that an intentional method, or is that more like subconscious creation, you think?
sometimes it's deliberate, sometimes it's not.
Okay.
You know, if it's subconscious, that's even better. You know.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
if you try to compose something which is not folk, but you can compose only folk. That's the
Right.
that's the highest level.
The next time you're on for the master class, we're going to hook up an accordion or something on you, and we're going to start getting into some specific musical examples. But before we wrap up today, you know, Bartók was wildly prolific, as you mentioned. You know, it seems like he never slept. I mean, these travels they weren't like take an Uber over there. I mean, these were very, very difficult trips to make, and he made a lot of them. In the meantime, he was composing, he was teaching, he was performing, he was doing all kinds of stuff. But he wasn't alone. And the big name that I wanted to ask you about was his relationship with Zoltán Kodály, who we will talk about at some point, probably again in the future. But let's wrap up with Bartók and Kodály, their friendship and what they did together.
Yeah. Okay. Before that, Öcsi, forgive me, but I have to claim one other very important thing about Bartók. Do you allow me to do that?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. So because it has actually a great relevance on Western ethnomusicology, especially American ethnomusicology. And Western ethnomusicology usually considers Hungarian as a different school, since Western ethnomusicology is based mostly on cultural anthropology and less on comparative musicology, and regards Hungarian ethnomusicology as something which is a kind of weirdo thing, and a little bit sometimes they consider it as outdated or something like that. That the comparative musicology and Bartók, which is actually a great mistake, since Hungarian ethnomusicology from the very onset always attempted to put equal weight and balance between the musicological aspect and the non-musicological aspect. So, for example, Bartók, even at the time of his early Romanian recordings, he just discovered that recording only the tunes and working with only the tunes is not enough, because you have to find the entire cultural, anthropological, folklore context of the very item, the very data you collect. So that's what I wanted to say. And that another thing, and for this I can recommend an excellent study by my colleague Daniel Lipták, that the founding father of cultural anthropology principles in American ethnomusicology, as he is considered as one of the founding fathers, is L.M.P. Merriam, who started to lay down those principles in the 1960s. And I must say that there is a Hungarian ethnomusicologist called Oskar Dincsér, who actually applied the same cultural anthropological principles together with musicological principles on his collections in 1940. So the statement that Hungarian ethnomusicology it's only and completely focusing on musicological aspects of the folk music, it's simply not true. So it's way more complex, and we believe, but perhaps last time I spoke about it a little bit, but we believe that ethnomusicology is like, when you have two keys to launch a nuclear device. Mm-hmm. And one key is the musicological aspect, and another key is the not musicological aspect. So the cultural, anthropological, the folklore aspect, the ethnographical aspect, and so on.
What's the what's the basis of this criticism? Like, so basically they're saying Hungarians are focusing too much on the musicology part of it and not looking at the cultural as well. That's the criticism. Is that? But what's the basis of that, or why would that? I mean, it's clearly, if anything, and let me guess. It might be that Bartók spent so much time talking about, you know, these music, these types, you know, song types, etc., that it was overly nerdy on the music side and not enough on the cultural side. But so is that where it's coming from, or you know?
I don't know. I know that the mainstream of the Western ethnomusicology does not care too much about the musicological comparison, and you know, sometimes and perhaps the other reason that mainstream Western ethnomusicology tries to create a model which can be applied for any music, any traditional musics all around the world, which is, by the way, not easy, but if we would like, so and in the meantime, I think that the analytic methods that Hungarian ethnomusicology uses can be applied for the tune analysis of any traditional tunes, even not traditional tunes. So you can do the same tune analysis with a Beatles song if you'd like to.
Correct.
All around it. You know, the one of the favorite I think it's pentatonic tunes of Pávai. He always says the Gyöngyhajú line from Omega, you know. So
right.
It's also like
yes.
Yeah. And so you can apply the analysis for any traditional tune with certain extensions. Of course, it's Bartók's system, and you know, by the way, and it's a little bit turning back to the dissertation I spoke about. You know, the criticism for Bartók's system and Bartók's categorization, which is more than 100 years old, or approximately 100 years old. It's completely legitimate. As you know, Bartók, by the time of his death, he was aware about some 30,000 Hungarian tunes, 13,000 Hungarian tunes, and from that he collected approximately, I think, 9,000 tunes. And you know, since then we know about, I don't know, hundreds of thousands. So that's a way larger tune stock, and for this, Bartók's original principles to set the categorization and the system to the increasing amount of folk tunes must be reviewed. So it's completely legitimate, and actually the Hungarian ethnomusicology did this review with Bartók's principles of today. Today, the classification of Hungarian folk tunes is not identically the same as Bartók did, but it's obviously founded on the very basis of Bartók, which Bartók created. Anyway, so I don't know the reason. Sometimes I think that, you know, since Western musicology not concerts too much, or not works too much with tune or melody analysis, and you know, and perhaps they not know really how to do that or how to start it, and you know, sometimes you always are a little bit how to say love it. I just looking for the proper word. You are always a little bit repulsive. That's what I was repulsive with things you do not know too many. So no one loves to go into the darkest depth of a forest you were never and you've been never
right.
there before. So.
But the data set that Hungarians are dealing with is humongous, and
yes, actually.
and you know, honestly, like looking at American music, let's say, it doesn't even compare. It doesn't even get close. I mean, what is American music anyway? The country, you know, but
it depends on you know. the recordings made in America, especially by Alan Lomax, that's very, very diverse folk culture there. So until the very very, very recent years, it was a thriving and it's if I just look through the work of Lomax, who by the way attempted and did a very personal and a very own system for musical analysis of folk music, which is a very, very complicated, because he tried to create something which can be applied to any folk tune all around the world. But just to put an end to this musicology or not musicology or something like that, let me translate quickly, and then if we have a little more time, I can speak about the relationship with Bartók and Kodály. Yeah. And also we have to mention, by the way, the wives of Bartók, so his first wife, Marta Sigler, who accompanied Bartók in his for example, in this 1914 field trip, and she also did field recordings. Or the second wife, Dita Pastori, who supported him in his final years. But before that, just let me translate roughly, because I have in front of me a good quote by Bartók from his writing that miért és hogyan gyűjtsünk népzenét, so why and how folk music should be collected, or why and how should be collected folk music, from 1936. So the ideal folk music collector or ethnomusicologist must be a true polyhistor. It exists in English. Yes, polyhistor. Polyhistor. Yeah. Polyhistor.
Oh, polyhistory.
Polyhistor.
I don't know what that is, but how do you spell it?
Okay. Okay. Wait a second.
Polyester.
No, not polyester. Not the plastic.
Histor. I see it. Okay, I see it, and it means a polymath. So that's what I thought.
Polymath.
Someone with a wide range knowledge or learning.
By the way, I had to Google on that. It exists in English. The polymath.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Anyway, so the ideal ethnomusicologist must be a true, a real polymath.
Yes.
Because the ideal ethnomusicologist must possess a linguistic and phonetical lore in order to notice the slightest signs and notice to transcribe the slightest signs of the local accent, for example. But the ethnomusicologist must be also a choreographer. To precisely describe the relations between folk music and folk dance. Only the ethnomusicologist also needs deep lore and education on folklore, because only with this education it's possible to describe the folk music, the relations between folk music and folk customs, for example, until the finest details.
Yep.
The ethnomusicologist must be a sociologist as well.
Yes.
To control or to not to control to find all the social changes and social impacts which disturbed the collective life of a traditional community. And then, when the ethnomusicologist would like to draw final deductions, then he needs historical, he or she needs historical and first of all local history of the local settlement, so historical informations. If the ethnomusicologist would like to compare folk music of other ethnicities with his or her own, then the ethnomusicologist must possess the knowledge of foreign languages. And then, above all, it's very important to be a good musician with good instinct and good hearing and good ear, Bartók concludes that kind of collector like this, who synthesizes as many skills as I just listed, simply cannot exist.
Right.
So perhaps a completely satisfactory ethnomusicology work can be done by one person.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's a huge
and Bartók,
thing. Yeah.
And Bartók always, and in another writing, he demands a very objective view.
Mm-hmm.
That he writes that you have to suspend your national impressions, national feelings, while you are working with interethnic research.
Yep.
Because objectivity is above all. So for him it was completely, and I think it's a very, very, very bright example for all the ethnomusicologists, not only in Carpathian Basin, which is for a long time is tormented by interethnic conflicts, but to every ethnomusicologist all around the world.
Agreed. Speaking of not doing it alone, a few last minutes, please, Soma, on Bartók and Kodály.
It's not a coincidence. They are always mentioned together. That Bartók and Kodály, Kodály and Bartók. They are actually to mention Bartók as a pioneer of Hungarian ethnomusicology and only Bartók, it would be truly unjust for Kodály, since they were together. So what we know, and even the revival, actually, what we know and what the knowledge we possess, it's founded entirely on these two people's work, tremendous work, and it's I don't know. So by the end, it's hard to say anything.
Did they physically
so
travel?
they had very good relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes they had little conflict, but I believe they could remain close colleagues and friends. And for us, I think sometimes they had debates in certain questions, but they are for me. So for a humble person working with ethnomusicology or with folk music from the 21st century, it's perhaps not our task to deem that in a particular controversy or debate which one had the right and which one was right. Anyway, so it's after all, it's not a coincidence they are mentioned together. So Bartók and Kodály, they started to do this tremendous work to collect the folk songs together, and they supported each other in order to create this very meticulous and very, very especially compared to these systems, were truly pioneering systems. So the methodology and this support and this work together.
Did they travel? Shoma, did they travel together on a lot of these field recordings?
There were travel. There were yes. They did travels together as well. And these works together and these very, very strong connection between them as colleagues resulted this wonderful system and wonderful discipline we call ethnomusicology, and especially Hungarian ethnomusicology, comparative ethnomusicology, and I think all these things are truly useful and truly useful and efficient in order to investigate the historical, cultural impacts, roots, relations of the folk music in the Carpathian Basin and beyond.
Yeah, what's interesting is Kodály Kodály was born 1882, so just a year after Bartók, but he lived until 1967, so he had another, 22 years of work. So, I know he continued.
Yes, actually, imagine that. Imagine what if Bartók would have that amount of extra years.
Yeah.
So there are, by the way, a lot of jeopardized projects. Bartók. By Bartók, of Bartók, jeopardized projects of Bartók. So, for example, in 1914, in his letters, he just planned to visit Chango Hungarians in Moldova, but he couldn't go. He planned it to the fall, and then in the summer, the First World War broke up. So he never could go there. Later in Budapest, he could record a few tunes from singers and informants from Moldova.
Mm-hmm. Well, they do go together, and next time, Soma, like I say, we're going to hook up a accordion on you, and we're going to talk bring some of these examples to life, and we're going to talk about harmonies and melodies, and perhaps more about these classifications. So everybody, Soma is going to be back with another masterclass series. And Soma, thank you so much for all your knowledge and expertise, and getting through this interview again in English. Well done.
Thank you, Öcsi. It was I think quite a good ride actually. By the end, I just got a little bit tired, but
it happens.
Sorry for that.
No worries, and so, I wish you the best of luck.
Perhaps we can make other podcast for about Kodály.
Yes,
because it was just a little bit missed from this entire image.
I'll put that on the list, Soma. So on behalf of Soma Salamon from Hungary and myself, Kalman Magyar Öcsi, thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.